everything is always an overcorrection. It's this pendulum, right? I don't like this, overcorrect. Oh, I don't like that, overcorrect.
Yes.
And then you need someone to kind of just like shatter the model and say neither of these things is right. So we had this place where, and I feel like most of it's gone, but like you couldn't be gay. Like that was like, even in my lifetime, you couldn't be gay. Gay marriage is still really new. I feel like that is so massively accepted. I think most Americans now support gay marriage and gay rights. Because of how restrictive everything was in the past 80s, 90s, 2000s, now everything has to be an identity. And to me, what pisses me off is like, well, you're not that thing.
That's right.
And you're putting yourself in such a box. And then also it seems like a play of significance as well, because when you get into a place where if you can make it more niche and more niche and more niche, it's like, well, now that's where I'm garnishing my significance and my uniqueness, instead of actually just being your unique self, which is probably more scary and more challenging. So if you say, I'm not any of these things, I'm a whole person and I change minute to minute. And there's this, I think it's an Alan Watts quote, and he has I have no obligation to be who I was 5 minutes ago.
And for me, and it sounds like for you as well, what a beautiful sentiment, what a beautiful, honest rule, because to foreclose the possibility of something other than, or to always be becoming is I think a lack of mental health. I think we have to get rid of identity. It's confining. People overly buy into it. They see it as absolute. They see it as, I guess reified, these higher natural, and I want people to get rid of identity, and I want them to challenge themselves to step outside. Yeah,
I love that so much. And I don't think enough people are doing that, because again, I think it's coming from a good place. Everyone wants to like honor everyone's experience and all of that, but I see it as like people are just taking their legs out from themselves.
And that's why I use the word sexual bypassing. I want to get that into the world more, because there's books on the concept spiritual bypassing, which is when you use spiritual concepts to avoid actually doing the work, right? Oh, well, I'm meditating, right? But you're still a jerk out in the world. So clearly there's a lack of application, and people do that, as we just kind of talked about briefly, sexually.
Yeah, it's instead of feeling the thing and allowing that natural process, well, I see oneness, so it's all okay. And it's like, you're skipping a lot of steps in between.
That's right.
And
we do that in a lot of areas of our life to our detriment.
So I guess the levels of vulnerability and being able to get to a place where you are open and receptive and curious, and you want to expand where your current state of development is, how does one do that?
Yeah, first you got to be brave.
Yeah.
Because, you're pushing outside of what you've known and how others know you. And to shift your own identity is to shift your location in the world for some people. And I said this, and it feels very vulnerable to say this, and I'll say this with you. I feel very safe with you.
Thank you.
I've lived in many different sexual worlds and different sexual identities, and none of them ever felt truly like home because of what we just talked about. There's an echo chamber and there's boundaries. So when I was part of the hetero community, I never felt like I fit in, and no one ever talked about pushing on those boundaries. When I spent time maybe in the gay community, it was very much the same thing. I didn't see myself there. I didn't relate to the values and the norms, and no one challenged me to engage or explore sexuality with women. And it's that confinement. So there's got to be some bravery and courage to step outside of an identity, because then you have to self-define, and we don't like that. We like everything to be clear and defined, and it's going to change your relationship to other people in the world, maybe your primary partner and family members. But back to your question, like, where's the work really begin? I think it's first on acknowledging that who I see myself to be is maybe more of a habit and a pattern. And it's confined within what's comfortable, and to step outside makes me anxious. I try to do work when I do psychotherapy as a sex therapist, where we look at people's arousal template, which looks at their fantasy and what they engage in with pornography, to try to understand other parts of themselves. And we start to ask questions as to, why do you have the sex you have? What would it mean, or what would it feel like to challenge some of those identities? So I have them start to look at those identities, right? Who are you as a sexual being? What part of you is drawn to that? What would it mean to step outside of that? Practicing stepping outside of that. So it's a lot of that like internal work and questioning, and sometimes it's very experiential. What I like about porn, when used correctly, is that it can be a space to practice, where you don't have to step outside your home or own what it is you're stepping into, but it's a way to explore and see how that feels. Also works that way for couples. I work with some couples that want to maybe think about bringing in another partner, or they like the idea of it but don't like the idea of it, and porn's a way to practice seeing your partner turned on by something other than you, or to bring another in symbolically. So porn can can play a role in that. But again, it really goes back to asking yourself, who do I see myself to be? And to find some areas to push on those boundaries, push on those edges.